Day, and this week's going so quick. I can't believe it. But then it has been a little bit disjointed, hasn't it? With Christmas. Hope everybody enjoyed their festive break. If you had a break, some people I recognise might have to have worked over that period. I'm hoping that you've kind of had a really good Christmas and New Year, and it's on to 2022. So, my name's Neil. I'm a wellbeing coach here at Isseropia, and today I have with me Emily, and we're going to be talking around confidence and self-esteem. Confidence and self-esteem are really important to actually help our mental health issues and concerns. And there'll be lots of questions about how we can build confidence. Self-esteem is a little bit different, and we'll discuss that. And that's really how we look at ourselves and how we kind of feel that we actually integrate um, into our environments. So we'll have a good discussion about this later. So this is an open forum. So just to let you guys know that you're very, very welcome to post any comments, any questions, anything like that that you feel that you like to post. It's just for your knowledge that whatever is posted on it is everybody else will see those comments as well. So if it's something that you feel that you'd like to get some help around, but you're not comfortable enough to post the comments on here, then just don't comment on here. Anything that comes up, we will keep an eye on everything, and if there's something that's relevant there and we've got enough time to capture that information, I will probably have a look at your question, and between Emily and myself, we can give you some ideas about how we started to build our confidence and our self-esteem. Both of us have lived experience, so we can actually kind of just help you out with some of the stuff that helped us as individuals. So just going on from that, we are well-being coaches. We work on kind of on the front line, so we understand people have struggles and some issues, and we're not therapists. We're not medically trained. We kind of work from a lived experience perspective. Now, obviously, we do have knowledge around some things, but a lot of the things that people suffer with, I probably myself and Emily, in certain respects, may well have suffered those things as well. So we do actually kind of get an understanding of how you feel about confidence. If you lack confidence, it has a massive impact on lots of other mental health concerns that we might have. And as I said, self-esteem is a little bit different, but we will have a discussion around self-esteem as well, and how you can start to maybe look at your self-esteem, question some things that you might need to question for yourselves, and then create a pathway towards wellness. Okay, so we have comments coming up, and as I said, dependent on the amount of people that comment, we will try and capture as many as we possibly can, but there will be some comments, I'm sure, that will come up that we don't quite get to, so we'll try and get to as many as we can. So we have some people in the background that will just be monitoring, obviously, the system that we're using, because from time to time we can have like internet issues and things like that. So we have a couple of people in the background. So one of our guys has just put, welcome to the live, everyone. This is Neil and Emily, who's one of our new wellbeing coaches. Start the discussion with us and feel free to comment your thoughts on the topic of confidence and self-esteem. So we'll crack on with some information in a minute, but again, the more kind of comments that we get from you guys will certainly help. There'll be lots of questions, I am sure, that you might want to post, and hopefully we'll be able to have a good discussion around that. So what is confidence? And the first question that's come up there, how does having confidence and self-esteem improve our mental health? Well, if you think about the impact that having lack of confidence has on your mental health, that's probably an easier way to answer that question. When we find ourselves in a situation where we're poorly from a mental health condition, we tend to start things like stopping doing things, and then we find ourselves in a position where our confidence starts to dwindle, and then to try and pick that back up becomes extremely difficult, doesn't it? And when you haven't got the confidence to start undertaking some things that you get enjoyment from, you like, um, it's really, really difficult. And then you can find yourself kind of being stuck, effectively.
It comes back to your comfort zone when you're feeling anxious about going out and you're not wanting to engage in social activities because you're anxious, then your comfort zone really shrinks, and then the next time that someone asks you, you're like, no, I don't want to go, and that kind of can be quite detrimental to your confidence, because we're people who are always learning, and we're always evolving. So when we shut ourselves off from other people, we can sometimes forget how to even communicate with people, and that all affects your confidence, because it's about practice. Like, confidence, I think, is all about practice, and when you've isolated yourself, you don't have that practice. So in order to improve that, you kind of have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. You have to do more things that you want to do and that make you happy, but are maybe a little bit scary, and build those new pathways.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about confidence, I do believe that everybody has confidence within them. You could be confident at lots of different things, and it's really just capturing that confidence and shifting it to where you're lacking confidence, if that makes sense. So I often, in a lot of my work with members and in the workshops, ask the question, where do you feel most confident? And sometimes they can find that a struggle, because they say things like, I lack confidence in everything that I do. But then when you start to actually question those kinds of things, or open up that debate a bit more, you start to realize that you are confident in lots of things. For instance, I lack confidence, but I am very confident in the job that I do, for argument's sake. I feel confident enough to enable myself to kind of do these forums and work for Iseropia. I have confidence in lots of different areas. I'm a very confident parent, for instance. I nurture my children. I'm very confident around my children. But I also lack confidence. For instance, if I had to get into a large group of people, I would struggle, which will kind of cage me a little bit in terms of, if I don't go to large groups, for instance, because my confidence will lack, but it's something that will bring me enjoyment, I need to build my confidence in that area. Is that making sense? So I think every one of us has confidence in something. So a question just to open up for you guys is, where do you feel that you are actually quite confident? And that could be being a parent, it could be your job, it could be your relationship, it could be your friendships, it could be your social circle. So when we're talking about confidence, we all have it within us, and it's just trying to find out where we lack confidence, shifting that kind of over a little bit.
Yeah, not focusing, saying, I don't have confidence in this. It's like, well, I could work on my confidence in this aspect, but I am really confident, and just making sure that you just focus on what you are confident on, and chip away at the things that you want to be more confident at. Because it is really hard. And I think if we all think about COVID and the difficulties that COVID have placed on society, then I think it can be really difficult to put yourself out there, especially if you're a vulnerable member of the public, and there are lots of things to worry about. But there are other aspects of life that you can work on and you can engage in to build your confidence, even if that's just coming to a workshop when you feel a little bit like you're not having a good confidence day, and just coming anyway. Then that will all help to build it. up again.
And the other part of that question was, how does it improve your mental health? Well, if you're confident in certain aspects, but you lack confidence in others, you can see that there's an impact. So let's just go back to the scenario of, if you're in a large social circle, many people lack confidence when they're actually interacting with other individuals because they feel that they're going to say the wrong things, or they're going to be judged, or whatever the case may be. But if they do that, and it's a success, and you are actually confident, it builds things that improve your mental health, like social interaction, relationship building. If you lack confidence and you stop yourself doing that, that will have a reverse impact on your mental well-being. So if you kind of don't go to social circles, for instance, and you shut yourself away from it, you're missing the fundamental parts of social connection, and you tend to find yourself possibly isolating or stopping yourself going to things that might bring you enjoyment, but you can't actually have the confidence to undertake it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think in the past there have been times where I've really not wanted to go somewhere. I've really tried to convince myself that I don't need to go because I'm anxious about it, and then I end up forcing myself to go, and I actually have a really good time. And then the next time that person asks me to go out, I'm like, yeah, because last time I went out with them, I had a really good time. So that's building my confidence. That's making sure that I have new experiences that are positive. And then that in turn builds your confidence, because I think confidence is one of the foundations of our mental health. I think that when we have low confidence, you kind of slip into the spiral of other negative thought processes because you don't believe that you have the capacity or the ability to deal with the situation that you're going into.
Which I completely agree. In terms of, we can actually stop ourselves from doing things because of what probably happens in our minds. For instance, we start to think about previous experiences where you may have had a situation where you've gone out and it's not gone quite to plan. And rather than actually start to think about, well, maybe that was just a one-off, you start to then think it through, you start to think a little bit deeper, and you think, I don't want to put myself back in that position again, because it might actually happen the same way. I'll give you a very quick scenario about when I was going through my journey, and one of the key things for me is I used to be the most confident person in the world. I got unwell and my confidence just shattered. But now I've done a bit of work around that, and in hindsight, the one thing that was within me and I'd stopped doing kind of opened it back up for me, because I started to then build my confidence, but I needed to build it in the right kind of way. What I'm saying there is, one key thing for me was social connection. When I got poorly, I kind of stopped myself from doing lots and lots of things that used to bring me enjoyment. And to try and get back on that after you've been poorly, you kind of get into this almost comfort zone, if you like. I'm in my comfort zone. I don't want to step out of it because I haven't got enough confidence to do it. But again, tips and tricks, guys, is if we start to incrementally push yourself out of that comfort zone, it becomes a lot easier. And there are many things that I stopped doing that I kind of started to do again that now bring me the things that I want. They bring me joy, fulfillment, connection, and all those types of things. And my confidence has actually improved as a direct result of that.
And I think it's such a cycle, because when you're not doing so well in your confidence, you can then, your mental health can be impacted. And then when you are doing well in your mental health, your confidence is impacted. But sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I was on my journey to getting better, I didn't even realize that I felt more confident until somebody else pointed it out to me.
Absolutely.
And then I was like, oh yeah, that's actually true. Like, I do feel more able to go into these kind of situations than I did a year ago, and that's because I've worked on other aspects of my life to improve how I think about the world and my thought process about my experiences. Then that has built my confidence just by the way that I think.
Yeah. We will talk a little bit about sort of negative thought process that we can find ourselves in, whether that be conscious or subconscious. Sometimes I often use this phrase, sometimes we can overestimate a threat and underestimate our ability to be able to deal with those kinds of things. And I like the fact that you said you worked on different elements that actually started to gain your confidence. Your confidence was building, but it was subconscious to you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Until somebody then said, do you know, you're a really confident person? But probably in our mindsets, you'd think, I'm not a confident person. I don't know how that person can see it, but I certainly don't feel confident. Do you see what I mean? So you are actually confident, and everybody's got confidence within them, and it's just capturing what you really need to shift that across to. So when I said my confidence went through the floor, I used to be able to do presentations in front of thousands and thousands of people. I got unwell, I stopped doing those kinds of things, and it was a damn struggle for me to even stand up in front of a family member for a period of time because I needed to overcome that barrier. And then when I did that, I incrementally kind of kept myself moving, and now I can do the job that I'm doing. But to guys, you know, we're realists here as well. I certainly wouldn't be able to go and stand in front of 600 people yet, because it has to be a little process that we all have to go through. But then if you ask me to be confident in an area that I have kind of repetitively done, I know what I'm doing, for instance, you know, the parts of your job and what have you, then confidence really isn't an issue. It becomes very normal. Very, very normal. It's where sometimes we need to push ourselves out of our little comfort zones, create new experiences. And when you do that and you start to get success, that in itself builds our confidence, doesn't it? And it just becomes kind of a natural thing. Your confidence builds and builds. You start to undertake new experiences. That opens your social circle. You feel better internally. And that's where, going back to the question, where it can have a massive impact on our mental well-being. If we lack confidence, then some of those negative thought things that we were talking about start to slip in. If you gain confidence and you build your confidence, then a lot of the positive thoughts start to come back in, don't they? You know, for instance, I am quite confident now that I can undertake my job or my role at home or even the environment in a lot of respects far more confidently now. You know, for instance, I can go out and I don't lack confidence in large amounts of people. That's not to say that it still doesn't create kind of things like a little bit of anxiety here and there, sometimes a little bit of fear, but I'm confident enough to be able to say, this is not quite as scary as I might be imagining it to be. And the more you do it, the more confident you become to do it again. It's a bit like you said, wasn't it? Once you've kind of done something and you think, you know, I felt good and other people could see that I did a good job, then you think, I'm now going to do some more. And then that confidence just transfers into lots of different elements, doesn't it?
I think the way that I think about it is that I used to be a really not a very confident person at all, and now I get excited about situations that I can put myself in that will test me, because I know that my confidence will be increased next time. And I think that that's somewhere that you can really strive to be going towards, is that instead of looking at it in a way that I'm scared, I'm not going to be able to cope, it's about, I'm confident maybe that I'm able to cope with the situation and I can get through it and nothing bad will happen. And then the next time you do the same situation, it's okay, I'm confident that nothing bad is going to happen and that I can do it to the best of my ability. And then the next time it's like, I'm confident that I'm going to be able to smash this. And I think it's just like, don't expect yourself to walk into every situation and be really confident. You just have to kind of focus on one aspect of the situation, hone in on that, make sure that you are positive about how you can cope with the situation, and then move on to and expand the confidence in more aspects of the same situation.
So a question really there is, what stops you from being or working on your confidence? Let's have a discussion around that. What stopped me from going into large groups? The kind of things that stopped me from undertaking that first step was because I thought that I would be judged.
Yeah.
I thought that people would look at me strangely. I thought that people wouldn't like me. I thought that people wouldn't allow me into their social circles. And that's really a little bit about self-esteem, which we'll go on to in a minute. But once you start to realize, a bit like Emily's just said, if you take small incremental steps, then you can actually reach where you need to be.
Yeah.
And you often hear the phrase, fake it till you make it. I think you said that to me before we went on the live.
Yeah.
And that's a good way of starting to build confidence. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase from many people. I've heard like actresses and actors say things like that. I was never an actress, but they're probably one of the best actresses out there now. And when you ask them questions about it, they go, I just faked it till I made it. And that was because they did it incrementally, little bit by little bit, and then they became what they wanted to become.
Yeah, and also it's about, so I heard Rihanna say that someone asked Rihanna what happens when you don't feel confident, and she's just said, I just fake it, because you can sometimes convince yourself that you are confident, and I think I've been in situations, and I'm sure you could probably agree that you've been in situations that you're not confident in, and then you get into the situation, you force yourself to be confident, and then 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, you're like, oh, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then your confidence goes up, and it's about convincing other people and yourself that you can do it. And I think that's the key.
And there's lots of little tips that I used, and I don't know if you use the same kind of things, but I did things like dress rehearsals. But I did dress rehearsals I was going to a party, to be honest, and I was very, very reluctant to go to this party because there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But I started to practice before I went. But I practiced and got my mindset in the place where I'm going to go to that party and I'm going to enjoy myself and I'm going to have fun. I'm going to hear laughter. I'm going to hear. So I actually did this dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
So when I went to this, I was already confident.
Yeah.
I went in there in a confident frame of mind and I kind of planned it out previous.
Yeah.
And went in, and guess what? I had a smashing time.
Yeah.
I still felt uncomfortable. I still felt those kind of feelings, but then my head was in the right place to be able to say, hang on, Neil, you're going to smash this. And that was a little bit like fake it till you make it. So I did things like dress rehearsals.
Yeah.
I also did things like, I don't know if you had these kind of experiences, is to kind of recognize that I am capable of doing it. And many a time, even if it didn't go to plan, a lot of the things that I was thinking, other people weren't thinking in that frame of mind. And it's almost like we become very conscious about things that probably some people don't even recognize. And I still find that today, do you not? Where you think you're going to go into this situation, and if you make an error with the word that you use, or if you're writing a brief or something and the spell check is not accurate, that people will say that's a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is people won't even recognize. I don't know, do you watch TV programs? I look at some TV programs and it's pretty clear if you watch it that there's mistakes.
Yeah.
But you don't notice them at the time.
No.
And I'm sure that those situations, the actor, the actress, or whatever, have gone back behind the scenes and beat themselves up.
Yeah.
I didn't do that perfect. Perfection is another thing that we'll talk about when we're building confidence, because sometimes we can lack confidence because the way I put it is we set our bar too high and we strive for something that is possibly not required all the time. Perfection, I don't know if you suffered with that,
Poisonous,
but perfection is poison. Yeah, I agree with that totally. I remember in my previous job where I asked somebody to do a briefing for me, and when they brought this briefing, it was like 2-3 weeks late, and then I kind of read through the brief, and it was absolutely perfect. There wasn't a spelling mistake. All of the commas and all that was absolutely perfect. But the question I asked was, why did it take you 3 weeks? And the reason why is because they would not present that without it being perfect. And what happened in that scenario is the brief was too big. So when I passed it to the next line, I took the brief and stripped it.
Yeah.
When I passed it to the next person, they had the same information, but trimmed out.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going for perfection. I was going to actually just make sure that I relayed the message, if that makes sense.
And I guess you could relate that to our inner monologue. So that person who wanted perfection wouldn't present it unless it was perfect is the way that our inner monologue is working. And we don't want to present ourselves unless we're absolutely perfect. So we isolate ourselves. But the person that's receiving the brief and the person that you're talking to doesn't care if it's not perfect. They don't want a robot. They just want you to be yourself. And I think it's quite a good way of looking at it, I think, because you're the only person, you're your biggest critic and you're your biggest judge, and no one else even perceives you in that way. A lot of the time, it's just about surrounding yourself with positive people, I think, as well.
One of the key things that I remember from my journey is sometimes you live with yourself. That's the person that you live with all the time, and it's really important of how you talk to yourself and how you we're going to be talking about positivity. We're not saying you need to move from negative to positive, but there's lots of questions that really have an impact on our self-esteem. We'll talk about our self-esteem, and that is how we kind of talk to ourselves from a negative perspective.
Yeah.
We kind of put our own barriers up from time to time. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that because I know I'm going to fail.
Yeah.
The reality is, you set yourself up for failure, don't you?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about self-esteem, that's about how we perceive ourselves. So self-esteem is much the same as self-confidence, but there's different elements.
Yeah.
Confidence is about how you operate in the environment, the outside, if you like, how you can cope with that. Self-esteem is about how you talk to yourself. And we'll talk about how we can talk to ourselves more positively moving forward. Because if you have been told from a very young age, for instance, that you are not going to be anybody in your life, over a period of time, that becomes your identity. Effectively, that's your belief system.
Yeah.
And sometimes our belief systems, we kind of almost live by our beliefs. I'm not going to do that because I know I'm going to fail. Everybody tells me that I'm a failure in my life and I'm going to be a failure. And we kind of operate from that perspective.
You live it, you manifest it into existence.
So when we're talking about self-esteem, we are talking about certain experiences that might have gone wrong. And then you start to kind of believe that in yourself. some of the things that I talk about quite often is, have you ever really looked about your self-beliefs and started to rationalize whether that belief is accurate or whether it's not? You just mentioned a little bit about confidence and how you built your confidence. Your belief system at that point in time is you are not a confident person.
Yeah.
That may be that somebody might have said that to you, or you started to believe that yourself. And that becomes your belief system. That has an impact on your self-esteem.
And I think it also kind of gave me an excuse. It was like, oh, I don't think I'm a confident person, so I can't be confident, therefore I'm not going to be confident. Whereas when I changed that dialogue, it was that I don't want to use this as an excuse not to do things anymore. I want to be different, and I think that's where it came from for me personally.
And a quick question that's come up there. Do you think you can change the way you look at the past? How does this affect your confidence? Quick question. Do you think you can change the way you look at the past? I'm going to use my experience. Yes, I can, but it takes a lot of hard work. I can start to change the way I look at the past. There are elements of the past that can actually, if I don't kind of deal with it, can define my future, if that makes sense. There's a lot of things in the past that could cause my negative thought patterns that I have absolutely no control over. Yeah, I have to kind of work around lots of other areas. Like sometimes I have to just forgive myself for some of the things that have happened. And that, but also forgiving, not so much forgiving some things that have happened, and kind of working towards accepting.
Yeah.
And
thinking about the bigger picture as well. I think I've been big on this. I think you sometimes can look at something that someone's done to you and you can say, well, they did this because they don't like me, or they did this because, but actually there might be something going on for them as well. And it's about changing that narrative all the time. We always say it's about changing your thought process, but it really is, because something might have happened that you have absolutely no control over, but something might have happened that someone else might have had no control over.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean that it's a you problem. That's entirely a them problem, and that shouldn't affect how you speak to yourself, because it comes back to you can't control everything. You can't control what other people feel. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you perceive it, and you can control how you react to it. And it's about creating those healthy reactions and those healthy thoughts that will help build your self-esteem, because you won't internalize everything all the time. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that I'm not an angry person. I don't get upset with people, but I internalize things. So if someone's not very nice to me, I will internalize it. And it's about flipping that and thinking, this isn't actually anything to do with me. This is something to do with them. And that's how you build your self-esteem.
And did you find that sometimes we can really focus our energies on the negative things and we forget about the positive things? One thing that I kind of do recall going through my journey was there was a lot of joy and happiness that got lost because I was focusing on a lot of the things that weren't particularly happy and particularly good. So now when we're talking about flipping your inner dialogue, there's a lot of times now that I actually start to look for some of the stuff that brought me what I needed now, or what I need now. So I often go back and think about the times when my children were on the beach. We weren't doing anything. It was just a lovely, beautiful day. Kids are running around covered in sand. You don't think about those kinds of things when you're consumed in some of the stuff that is happening possibly to you currently, or stuff that's gone not to plan, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I think you can use that for us especially. I think that if we hadn't gone through our mental health journey and we hadn't suffered so much and had that negative experience, we wouldn't be sat here right now doing what we love. So it's like flipping that, like, okay, this was really hard and this was really difficult, but it's actually made me who I am today, and that's okay. yeah, it's about how you perceive it, I think.
So again, when we're talking about these things, if you lack confidence or you lack self-esteem, there's a few things that certainly helped me, and that was first of thing that I had to really look at was my thought process, because one thing I didn't do is challenge any of my thoughts. I had a thought and I connected with that thought, and that was 100% fact. So how can we start to change that? It's not simple, but it's something we can do. I don't know how you did it, but I used to, at the end of the day, write my thoughts down. Not only the thoughts that I was having at that point in time, but a lot of the thoughts that challenged me during the day. And that's all I did initially. But then when I started to do that, it kind of helped me, firstly, with things like sleeping, because getting it from there onto a piece of paper helped.
Yeah, it gives it less power.
And then the next step, when I started to look at this, there was a lot of things that I started to question. Was, I know I was in a bad mood that day, but it doesn't make me an angry person. And I got sad because I got angry. So I started to challenge some of these thoughts that were coming into my head. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
You can use thought diaries. You can use pieces of paper. I've had people that actually just write their thoughts down and then just screw them up and put them in the bin. They say that it was almost like, I think the word that they used was, it was a brain offload.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different tools and tricks that you can use around that. You just mentioned positive affirmations. That actually came to me after I started to look at my thoughts, because I started to rationalize my thoughts and said to myself, is that true? Or is it not entirely true?
Yeah.
Because I'm not that person. And then I started to say, why am I not that person? Because I showed kindness. I showed empathy to this individual.
Yeah.
So I started to do positives. Today's been a good day because it's far outweighed some of those challenging thoughts that I connected.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I did when I was in the midst of my mental health difficulties was I got a jar, and every time someone said something nice to me, I wrote it down. Or every time I felt like I liked something about myself, I wrote it down and I put it in this jar. And then when I didn't have very much confidence, or I was feeling really low in my self-esteem, I would just get the jar out and I would just think, look at all these nice things that people think about me. Look at all these nice things that I thought of myself, and it boosts you, even though you think, oh, I'd never take it out and I wouldn't be able to write it down. But it's about bringing yourself out of that negative spiral and saying, actually, I'm just feeling this way because I'm sad, or I'm just feeling this way because this happened. I'm not actually this person.
Yeah.
And it's really, really powerful.
I did much the same with my daughter because she suffers a little bit with anxiety. And I created a box where when she was feeling an emotion like sadness or anger, I'd asked her to write the emotion down and pop it in a box. But I also did the same was when she got that element of something that's happened that created fun for her, to write it down and pop it in the box. And at the end of each week, I only did it for a period of time. On the Sunday, we'd open up the box and there'll be sheets of paper all over, and we'd just pick them up. And she started to go, yeah, I was only sad for a period of time.
Yeah.
And threw it away. But then she'd say, do you know, I was happy for about a day because I went down the beach with Naomi or whatever it was, and I had real good fun. I've got really good memories of that.
Yeah.
So she'd keep it.
Yeah.
So she started to then rationalise her thoughts.
Yeah, and focus
and focusing on the positive side of things. And to be fair, she's a lot better. She hasn't overcome her anxiety, but she's a lot better now. So there's another way you can start doing that. I've already spoken about visualising yourself in positions that you might feel are going to be uncomfortable, and that's really just practice, isn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't go into an interview and not have prepared, so why would you go to anything and not have mentally prepared even a little bit. If it's something that you're not confident in, then I'd say that prepare is the best way.
I agree. I love the way that you just put that. Who actually goes to a really important meeting, for instance, without actually having some kind of practice? You said about a job interview. I would say if you're going to the doctors, when you go to the doctors, you know that there's going to be questions that you need to ask. There's going to be some questions that he might well ask you. So you do a little bit of prep before you go. I'm going at 10:30 on Monday, so I must remember I've got to do this. I've got to mention that. I've got to ask about my medication. It's all practice. So when you go there, your needs are met. And it's a bit like you said about the job interview. If you go to a job interview with no practice or no kind of knowledge around it, are you likely to get that job? You probably are more likely to not get that job than you are. So when we're talking about visualizing and practicing confidence, that's a really good tool that I use. Might help you guys. And that's really about knowing or preparing yourself for something that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, when you step out of your comfort zone, is it fair to say it's always going to be uncomfortable? Because it's something that you're scared of or something that is really new. And it's when you start to actually look at what is going to go right instead of what is going to go wrong, that's when you can start to build your confidence. So if I went to a social circle, for instance, now, the first thing that pops into my head is if I go, I might enjoy it. If I go, I might actually want to go another time, rather than if I go, that person's going to ridicule me. That person's going to tell me that I don't fit in. So I've kind of flipped it. How can you practice about being more kind to yourself? I think we've just spoken a little bit about that. You use positive affirmations. I use like a thought diary. I'm now in a position, I don't know whether Emily is quite there yet but as soon as a thought comes into my head, I'm naturally just straight away, I do kind of don't connect with it, but I go, hang on a minute, that's just a thought. I need to start thinking about this. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that real? Is that fake? So there's lots of different ways of being kind to yourself. Do you kind of get up in the morning and have anything that you do? Tell you, I do, because when I open up the curtains, and I know this sounds silly, Emily, when I open up the curtains now, I will go, thank you, another day. Sounds ridiculous.
No, but it is.
But it kind of makes me feel good. Thank you for another day. Not, oh my God, it's pouring rain again. Here we go. It's thank you. I can actually get out and do what I want to do. Makes me feel good. I know people that at the end of the day, before they retire for bed, they say thank you for my day. Thank you for that moment in my day. I really appreciate that.
I've got a diary that has different kind of things on it, and it's about what are you high-fiving yourself for, which is my favorite, because I think we can go through the day and we can think, oh, I haven't achieved anything today because I haven't done anything. But actually, we don't have to achieve, like, you don't have to climb a mountain every day. It can be washing the dishes, or it can be making your bed, or it can be waving to neighbor, or anything that you just feel like bettered your day or bettered someone else's day. I think it has that, and then it has the 3 things that you're grateful for, and what a fun thing that you learn, and it just kind of really tries to pinpoint where you can be grateful and where you can be kind to yourself, because I think when we're feeling unwell in our mind, it can be quite difficult to think of things that you're grateful for. And when I was really unwell, I'd just write things like, oh, my mum, or the dogs, or the same thing every day. And then I tried to force myself to be inventive, so I would then write like the sunshine or the plants, or like different people that I'd had a conversation with in the day. And it's about really challenging your thoughts, not just to take the easy route and be like, oh, I'm thankful for my mum, or oh, I'm thankful for my daughter, or I'm thankful. It's about putting yourself out there and saying, actually, thankful that it was sunny today, or I'm thankful that my plants are still alive. So yeah.
It does. It has a massive impact on how we kind of talk to ourselves. I think really that's it. When we do the workshops, we have some exercises to kind of get people to start working on things like that. And there's what we ask them to have a look at is if there's a negative statement, is actually trying to look at that from a more positive aspect. Yeah. And that in itself, I don't know if you felt it, was extremely difficult for me because the negative was so ingrained in me. It was hard to kind of start to change that narrative. And then there was a few questions that we used where it was just like a quick guide to enable you to start thinking. And I used the phrase flipping it. And there's a couple of people that I know now that can almost immediately flip a negative into a positive. They don't even connect with a negative anymore. They just go positive straight away.
And I think a lot of us, especially me, I can easily flip it. Well, I could easily flip it for other people, and I could be, if someone came to me and said, oh, I'm really struggling with this, and I'd be like, oh, I haven't thought about it like this, but I always struggled to do it with myself. But now I can do it with myself, and I can go through that step-by-step guide of, okay, well, what does it mean to you? What has someone said, and what have you made it mean? I think that's something, one of the most powerful things that someone's ever said to me is what did they do and what did you make it mean? Because sometimes there's so many different ways that it can be interpreted, especially when we're on our phones and like throughout lockdown, you really miss that connection, and that interpretation gets blurred. And I think it's really important to remember that just because you interpreted it that way doesn't mean that they meant it that way.
I like that. I do like that. What does it mean to me? What did it mean to me? I think that's a really good kind of way of doing it. So there's lots of ways that you can start to become more kind to yourself. And I think Emily would agree. Practice is the most important thing. It's planning and practicing things, no matter what we do. If we want to build self-esteem, we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. Comfort zones are good, but they can be very, very restrictive and limiting. And you will find that comfort zone starts to shrink unless you start pushing yourself into maybe creating new experiences, or maybe, like I said a bit earlier, going back to some things that used to bring you joy. I don't know if any of you have felt this, but when you become unwell, one of the first things that happened to me was all the stuff that I enjoyed, I stopped doing.
Because it's almost, in a way, it's almost like you don't want to be happy because you feel like you don't deserve to be happy. So then you strip yourself of that privilege almost, because you want to just wallow in your sadness, because it's easier than to having to wake up and fight every day. But it's not worth it. It's really not.
No, and like I say, comfort zones can shrink. And when we're talking about building confidence, building self-esteem, if you're sat in your comfort zone all the time, like I said, it's restrictive. Plus, it becomes smaller and smaller. There is no way moving forward. So when we're talking about, another key thing that helped me was planning things out, but doing it at the pace that was right for me. Or talking about social circles, Emily, I don't think I ever anymore would I want to go back and have a big social circle that I had, because for me now that would be too uncomfortable. But I kind of understand that a social circle of some element is important because it gives me what I need. So what I do in certain situations like that is I plan things. And when we talk about moving from I can't do it to I will do it and I have done it, You can't go from one to the other overnight, because that's when you set yourself up for failure. When you set yourself up for failure, or you do something too quick, that's when it goes back to our belief system and starts that negative thought process back off again. If we do it incrementally, it becomes a lot more manageable, a lot less scary, and your comfort zone starts to widen.
It's like what they say about learning to do a 5K, like for the couch to 5K. You don't just expect yourself to be able to run the 5K. You walk for 30 minutes and then, no, walk for 30 seconds, then run for 30 seconds. And you do it incrementally, because otherwise you're just going to really struggle, and you're really going to suffer, and you're going to get a stitch, and you're going to get injuries, and you're not going to do it again. So if you set yourself smaller targets, then it will be easier and more manageable, so that you can then progress more.
Yeah, did you find that you used kind of planning and stuff? Especially, obviously, you're brand new into the job, or relatively new, aren't you? I'm sure that there were sort of situations where you had to plan. You knew that possibly you were going to come into a new environment with new people you've never worked with before. That in itself would have created possibly anxiety, worry, fear. If you were not robust enough to push yourself past some of those things, there were lots of areas, points in that kind of journey where you could have just said, this is uncomfortable. I'm not going to do it. And then the long-term thing that happens from that point of view, had you have taken that path, is you'd be unemployed.
And it would then be harder to go into another job, because I'd be like, well, I'm just going to fail again.
So your self-esteem starts to get dented, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So just a very quick question to you is, now that you've taken that step, that was probably hard, but how do you feel now?
I feel so happy. Like, I feel like when I got the job, I was like, oh, I'm really excited to start, but now this is like my dream job. So it's just, my mum has said to me that you just ooze confidence now, you just ooze peace and calm, and it's because I'm confident in my abilities. And it's relieved so much stress and pressure from me, because I believed in myself, and I didn't let that inner critic say you're not good enough. I fought, and I got the other.
So you got yourself in control. So the inner dialogue was incorrect, and you just said, hang on a minute, I am capable of doing this. That's confidence. And what's it done for your self-esteem? It's probably flourished.
Yeah, massive. Yeah.
And that one step, like I was just trying to explain, there was that point, wasn't there, when you could have just said, my comfort zone is my safety.
Yeah.
But you pushed yourself away, and look what the result ends up being.
Yeah, for sure.
And now when we're talking about positive affirmations, do you find that those positive affirmations are actually real and true now? I remember when I started, there was a lot of positives that I started to tell myself. I didn't believe, but I still did it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it became believable. And then after a period of time, it became real.
Yeah.
So writing down positive, I'm actually grateful for lots of different things in my life, and I don't even think about it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's like faking it till you make it. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to go into this room and I'm going to hold myself in a really confident way, and then you do, and it's like, okay, I am strong enough, and I am resilient enough, and I am brave enough to get this done, and then you do. Whereas if you're talking to yourself, I can't do it, then you probably won't be able to do it, because you've talked that into existence. You've got yourself into such a state that you don't have the ability, because your mind's just like worrying. It's got so much on its mind that you can't give it all of your attention.
So you can see confidence and self-esteem is an important part of maintaining our mental well-being. A lot of people look at that and think that's not really going to have an effect on how I'm feeling, but it's a really fundamental part. So what we'll do is, if you want any further information around things like that, that's what Isoropi is all about. We do a workshop on confidence and self-esteem. We do a number of workshops around lots of other elements of our mental health concerns. Many of those mental health concerns a lot of people struggle with. But one thing that I learned, especially over my journey, is they're very much interlinked. For instance, if you suffer with lack of confidence and you start to work on that element, it changes lots of other things. You become less anxious. You become very much less depressed. So Isopia has a number of things. We are now moving to self-referral. So if you want some information, maybe you want to join Isopia, then please give us a call or contact your GP. It'd be nice to hear from you. We have a selection of workshops, as I said. So if you want any further information, the place to come is Isopia. I hope you've really enjoyed yourself today, just listening to us go on and on and on. Don't forget, any out of hours services that you require, you do have the crisis line information, which we will post on for you, and you have Safe Haven that you can call. And by all means, give us a call and we can chat to you over the phone. And if you feel that Isopia will be something you can benefit from, then we can do a quick telephone interview and we can go from there. So hopefully that's helped a little bit. And I kind of would like to say thank you very much for jumping on and listening to us. So Emily and I will go now, and thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.